You ready to go?
Yeah, I think. Let me just check. I'll start the webinar. Yeah, we're ready. Um, so I'm gonna turn off my camera and start right now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first edition of 2025 Latino Donor Collaborative, partnered with my own Conectado AI. And we had such a great year last year, and with all of our webinars, and we wanted to kick it off this year with a bang, and you're going to love what we have in store for you today. We truly appreciate all of you taking the time here, as well as our partners and our collaborators and our speakers, to make this all happen. As you know, this series is an initiative with the LDC, with Conectado, and with several other partners to bring this to life. And our goal is to bring together top industry experts like who you'll hear today to share insights on the future of AI and its impact across sectors. So let me tell you a little bit about the LDC, which I'm on the board of, proudly so. At the Latino Donor Collaborative is really dedicated to amplifying the impact of Latinos in the tech industry, especially as we've been focused on in the past 3 years, artificial intelligence. And as you all know, AI is rapidly shaping the global economy. We hear about it every day. You can't open up whatever you whatever you get your news from and not hear about artificial intelligence. And it's essential that Latinos, which is the growth of the economy, is at the forefront of this transformation. So this webinar series is just a piece of our broader work at in this partnership. And the 2024 U.S. Latino in Tech Report AI Edition highlights the crucial role of how we all play in this AI development. And this report is really available for free, so you can download there at the LDC website. You can also get it from conectado.com, and we encourage you to explore the content of that report and use the insights to drive meaningful conversations. So I wanted to share with you today, we have such an amazing speaker, um, Pilar Manchón. Dr. Pilar is with us today. She's a top engineering director at Google, and she's going to shift the our thinking. She has just recently, actually won some awards in Spain. I know I've known Pilar for quite some time at with High Tech, the Hispanic Technology Executive Council, where she was one of the High Tech 100 for many years. And today we want to shift our focus to cutting edge innovations happening at Google and beyond. And with a deep dive into the future of AI, the conversational intelligence, and the transformative impact of models like Gemini. And so, with that, I want to really welcome Dr. Pilar Manchón to talk to us about her vision, about what she sees. She's a visionary, and I'm just so proud to know her and to proud to be part of this AI journey with her. I've sat on other boards with her, so I can tell you she is the real deal. So please welcome Dr. Pilar Manchón to speak to us about navigating the future of AI and sharing what she's shared with many around the world. So, Pilar, can you join us here and give us your insights, please?
Well, thank you so much for such a kind introduction, Guillermo. It's a privilege to be here today, and I'm looking forward to just sharing some insights with you, and then maybe having a little time for questions or discussions, and see what comes out of there. So, with your permission, I'm just going to start sharing a presentation. So, as Guillermo said, this is a presentation that I have recently presented in the world at the Mobile World Congress, and it's about what we're living through. Can somebody confirm whether you can see my screen?
Yes, we see it.
You see it. Okay, let's get started then. So the presentation is called "A Time to Grow" because basically most people are just thinking right now, should I be afraid? Should I be getting involved in this? Should I be fighting it? And sometimes people are just confused about what to do. But the reality is that the future is not coming, it's not about to arrive. The future is here. We are already living through what AI can do for us. This is the beginning of something much, much bigger. Actually, generative AI represents a fundamental shift. It's like tectonic plates moving under our feet. It's a bigger change, in my opinion, than even the printing press or electricity, because in those cases, well, they trigger an enormous amount of progress. Right now, AI can change pretty much everything. It's almost hard to think about any market or any you know area of knowledge where AI is not going to have a direct or indirect impact that is going to be transformational. We're talking about an explosion of creativity, productivity, and efficiency. And those are the areas where we're most familiar with. Like most of the tools that you see today are about how to be more productive, how to be more efficient, how to do my job faster, but also about how to be more creative, how can I generate new things in the questions around, is AI truly creative or is just a mixture of things that it has learned somewhere else, right? It's transforming all kinds of industries and markets. And something that is really important to take into consideration is not only how AI is transforming the markets in the sense of how to make them more efficient or productive, it's also about, is it changing the market altogether, like the business modeling itself? Are we going in that particular market through such a transformational shift that nothing is what it used to be? And therefore, we have to reevaluate our strategy and our position and everything. And this is all about data, infrastructure, energy, and compute. Those are the ingredients together with human beings. We cannot forget the talent that needs to be behind that. But it's also a precisely addressing the future of work and talent and how you train people and what skills that people need to have and how do you evaluate those skills. So the future of work is one of the concerns or the areas of interest, but also how to develop talent as well. And of course, the future of science. If you ask me what am I most excited about in terms of how AI is changing and shifting everything, is about how it is impacting science. And I'll give you a little peek about a project that we just recently announced, and not everybody has access to it, but fortunately, you can actually register to be what's it called? A trusted tester. And I'll show you what it looks like a little farther ahead in the presentation. And of course, we can't forget about education. I think that one of the areas, in addition to medicine, that is being transformed by AI is education. So it's about how we learn, how much, when, with what sources. And of course, all the difficult areas like, am I learning the right kind of things? Where are the sources that tell me whether this is true or an interpreted version of the truth? and so on. So we have at our disposal a tool that's amazing, almost in any direction that matters, right? And because it's so transformational, so revolutionary, is this a time to be concerned? That's what's in the back of many people's minds. In my opinion, it's a time to dream. It's a time to think about what we can do. It's a time to be bold. It's a time to be ambitious. It's a time to embrace what we have and think about what we can build with it. Because this is giving us an opportunity to basically rebuild everything that we know. And we can be witnesses of it, but we can also be part of it. We can be contributors to this whole revolution. But it's also a time to question whether the information that you're getting is the right information, whether it's true. We're now in a world where it's fairly easy, technically speaking, to emulate certain things. So now it's a matter of questioning what I'm seeing reliable? Is it true? And therefore develop not only the technologies that will protect us in terms of cybersecurity or watermarking or things like that, but also develop enough knowledge so that we can protect ourselves. It's also a time to check our beliefs, right? Who we are when we actually have the possibility of changing the world. What kind of a world do we want to live in? What kind of a world do we want to build now that we have the opportunity to do so, almost from scratch, if you will? If you can think about what are the main values that have to guide our understanding of the world, and therefore what ingredients we can put in that new recipe of what we want to build, right? And it's also a time to decide what you want, because AI is going to make things available to all of us. It's basically going to make things easier to access, democratize access to knowledge, to information, to training, to health, to so many things that is a little overwhelming to think now I have to either accept by default whatever it is that I'm giving by who's deciding that, or take the time to decide what is it that I want and how much of it for me, for my family, for my friends, for my children. So it's a time to understand what's coming and decide what role you want to play and what do you want to be recipient of as well. It's a whole wide world out there, and there are so many different beliefs and peoples and cultures and backgrounds. So it's important that we address this future from a diverse point of view, so that the AIs that we build are not just the average of everybody's opinions or everybody's position on something, but rather enriched by different positions that can be different, but cater to regardless of how different they may be. And you might be wondering, what is the role that you want to play in that world, right? Especially, if you're not a developer, you're not like leading a company that's building AI. What's the role that each of us individually can play in the circles that we move, and with our ability to influence others as well? One of the key elements is understanding, why are we here? Why is this AI revolution so different, and why are foundation models so important? And I imagine that most of you in this call, if not all of you, already understand what the foundation models are about. But the key elements that you need to consider are the fact that you can extend their functionality with very few resources. So once you have a pre-trained model, then in order to train that model or retrain that model to do something else, you only need a tiny little bit of data. And that's, for instance, helping us with the translation of languages that have fewer resources. Like in English and Spanish, you have, so many resources, right? But when it comes to other languages of the world that are, in secluded areas or not spoken by very many people, the resources are very few. Now we can get those languages translated and serviced with very few resources because we have the foundation models. Naturalness has always been something that we have been pursuing. Like, I've been in the world of AI for decades at this point. I'm aging myself. But naturalness has always been something that we've strived towards. And now we have achieved this quasi-human or beyond human naturalness, where it's hard to tell, and sometimes impossible to tell, whether the agent that's talking to you is actually human or not. The other part is that natural language is actually our operating system. It's how we think. It's the most intuitive tool to negotiate any task. You learn that by default. You're trained by default. Your brain is used to that. So using natural language for your everyday life is just something natural. A multimodality is also a key ingredient here. We're naturally multimodal. Like, I think that you might be able to see me. I'm not sure what the setup of this video call, but if you can, I'm moving my hands a lot and I'm smiling and I'm actually underlying some of the things that I'm saying. And the
We
experience,
see you
you
well,
see
and
me.
we see your movements, and we're trying to figure out if you're an AI or if you're really real.
Oh yeah, I'm a clone right now. But thank you for that, Guillermo. So, what I was trying to say is that the experience of seeing somebody, seeing the movement, seeing my lips moving, goes beyond listening to what I'm saying. It's a whole different experience that we are experiencing, right? Experiencing. And then models also emulate very complex human behaviors that before our time were very difficult to emulate, were very difficult to do through rules, right? So again, this is a huge shift because the new generation of technologies are so close to the things that we thought were going to be so hard for AI to do. But one of the key elements of this kind of thought process is, where are we going with AI? And where should we go with AI? Are we going where we should go? Do we have to think about this? You find very polarized positions in the market, and I'm sure that you are very familiar with those positions. But we can talk a little more about that later. At Google, we have been very busy for the last decade or more, and we have been launching different products, most of which you're probably familiar with, even before this whole revolution of the transformers that, by the way, started in 2018 with the launch of BERT. But anyhow, so much of us, so much of the services, so much of what we do every day is AI based right now. That is incredible. Something that is also important to consider is that AI is not just the software. It requires the hardware, and it requires very powerful hardware. So when you have the multiple layers, not only the hardware, but the firmware and the platform and then the models on top, you have the possibility of actually optimizing for the full stack as opposed to having to optimize just one layer. That's why the fact that we have the next generation, the sixth generation of TPUs, Trillium, is an incredibly interesting step towards making AI accessible and more, let's say, inexpensive. I don't know whether word inexpensive is the right word, but anyhow, less expensive. And I'm hoping that some of you or all of you have heard about AlphaFold. This is one of those examples that get me really, really excited. For those who might have not heard of it, AlphaFold 2 actually got three scientists from Google the Nobel Prize in physics this year. Whether physics is about this or something else is a different discussion, but the reality is that the impact that this tool alone has had in the field of bioengineering and biomedicine is incredible. So AlphaFold, the whole family of AlphaFold tools, is about the predicting the 3D structure of proteins, the unfolding of proteins. And why is that important? Because in order to understand how proteins interact with one another or interact with other particles of life, you need to know their 3D structures. And for those of you who might not be as familiar with this field, before this tool, it used to take a PhD student, a PhD candidate, it's all PhD, like 5 years of work to basically do one protein. One protein, 5 years, one PhD candidate. So you can imagine that only a few months ago, before this tool was launched, a few months or maybe a little more than that, there were only a few hundreds of proteins that had been fully described and their 3D structure mapped out. Well, with AlphaFold, the 200 million of proteins were done in a matter of weeks. We've advanced millennia when it comes to the unfolding of proteins. And that opens the door to understanding the world so much better, to making this available to all those scientists out there who are taking protein research into different areas. Now they have an incredible amount of opportunities to basically develop new drugs or understand how different diseases evolve or cure. I don't know, maybe in the longevity research, right? But that wasn't enough, right? So once you discover all the different proteins, what do you want to do? Was like, okay, let's do and let's see and understand how all the different particles of life interact with one another. So AlphaFold 3 is no longer just about proteins. It's about how all the different particles of life interact with one another. Yet another step forward, exponential step forward in terms of this kind of research. But what do you do when you've done everything that already exists? Well, you actually go one step further and you say, well, if we have already discovered and unfolded, let's say, all the different proteins, why don't we create new ones? Why don't we invent new proteins and see where that takes us? Again, it's amazing, it's exciting. We're talking about millennia in exponential progress in a matter of months, right? And this is applicable to basically any field, but the field of medicine, I mean, all of us have suffered more or less difficult diseases, cancer, and so on. So advancing and having AI that can help you and help your doctors be better at diagnosing, at treating, and understanding how a particular treatment affects your particular constitution, your particular DNA, your particular genome, customization of medicine, having all this information at reach is just an amazing opportunity for us to be healthier and live longer, right? And when we talk about new revolutions, how can we not think about quantum? We recently announced Willow, our state-of-the-art quantum chip. And even though it's not here yet, I think that all of us can imagine how the intersection between quantum and AI is going to be yet another step forward in that incredible race that we are taking right now, that we're experiencing, right? And also the Project Mariner, which is exploring the future of human agent interactions, starting with your browser, right? So if you're interested in joining this project, you have the tester waitlist that you can join. You just need to Google it, Project Mariner. Or the different versions of Gemini, right? Because Gemini is not just a model, it's a family of models that has been developed like for bigger kind of models or smaller models, or some of them focus on, for instance, reasoning, or focus on specific areas like 2.0 flash thinking experimental model, which kind of gives you not only whatever answer you're seeking, but the reasoning behind that answer and the steps that you followed in order to get there. So you can almost debug the thinking or the reasoning of the model behind that. Of course, you don't need that all the time, but depending on what you're doing, having all this variety of models available to you is just amazing. GraphCast. So it's not only about our productivity and our efficiency and our everyday tasks. It's about protecting the planet. It's about understanding how climate and weather works. And this new model helps us predict the weather more safely and accurately. Wildfires. I mean, I don't know how many of you are in California, but we all suffer tremendous fires over here. I am also from Seville in the south of Spain. We have so many fires there. So the fact that AI can now help us detect, monitor, and help tackle those wildfires, while at the same time helping put together plans to optimize for the optimized use of resources is incredible. We can tackle them faster. We can detect them faster. We can do so much more, especially when the weather conditions change, and therefore all the plans need to change very quickly. That used to take a long time. Now with AI, we can be very efficient doing that. The Green Light Project. I don't know whether any of you have heard about this project, but I think it's a really neat, interesting project. So we're all worried about green gas emissions. Well, with this project, by optimizing the traffic lights, like adding a second here or removing a second there, you can actually reduce the emissions of those cars in those intersections by almost 10%. And it doesn't even need to be everywhere in the cities. There are specific crossroads where by optimizing those, and it's not even noticeable to us because it's a matter of seconds, the reductions, the winnings are spectacular. You can also decide to choose eco-friendly routes. So not only do you get Google Maps to tell you, okay, how do I get there and how long is it going to tell me? You can actually choose a route that is more eco-friendly. Or the project Contrails, which I was discussing with some airlines a couple of weeks ago in Miami. This project is about optimizing the routes that planes take to go to different places and therefore reduce the emissions. So it's not reducing the emissions themselves, it's by optimizing the route and therefore minimizing the backdraft and other things. I'm not really sure exactly what the phenomena are. You can reduce the emissions up to 54%. So it's incredible. And actually, the cost is minimal because these slight variations of flight routes are actually imply less than 1% in extra fuel for them, for the planes. Data Gemma. So Gemma, for those of you who might not be familiar with that, with these models, are the open source models that we also make available for our customers or anybody that wants to use them. And with Data Gemma, you can actually connect the LLMs with Google's data commons to prevent hallucinations. So hallucinations still remain as one of the key problems that we have to fight, that we have to discover how to work with. And with Data Gemma, you can do that on your own with your own data and by using an open source model. And this is the project that I was telling you about before. I've been using this for months now, and I'm super excited. This is the AI co-scientist. And through a very basic prompt, it basically does a search of all the literature available in the internet about a particular subject matter. And then it generates a bunch of ideas. So you can see some of those ideas listed here. Like this is one of my projects, AI embodiment framework. On the right-hand side, you see the prompt I gave the tool. Develop a comprehensive framework, with these are my preferences. And it generated, you can see here, 1,450 ideas with 1,150 categories, out of which all of these are eligible. All of these have been improved. 193 have been deep verified. There are different observations, and the top score is 1624. So what happens is that out of those ideas that are following my instructions, these start competing with one another and start kind of, changing the score until they are re-ranked. And when they get a certain level of maturity, you get a research plan. And this is what a research plan looks like. This one is a 7-page long research plan that, as you can see, without going into the details, please don't take pictures of this. It's part of my work. It gives you the summary of the main research directions. It gives you the use cases. It gives you taxonomy of the types. This was months of work if you want to be exhaustive when you're doing research. So you can imagine how excited some of us scientists are. But there is so much more. We're accelerating the growth and transformation for businesses. We're detecting diseases through eye analysis, watermarking and identifying AI-generated images, understanding proteins, like I said, discovering millions of new materials. You can see all that. There are so many things that we can do with AI and are already doing, right? And yet, we're a little nervous because everything is changing so fast. We're moving so fast. We're actually building the road as we go, right? But there are still many challenges that we have to face, like hallucinations, control, anthropomorphism, privacy, dealing with time, explicability, the cost of computation, safety issues, memory, math. There are so many things that we still have to work on, right? So how do we move forward together? How do we actually envision that world that I have been describing, where everything is shifting and changing so fast? And not everybody understands what's happening, right? Because it's really hard to follow. The key to all this, in my opinion, is about education. Educating individuals, communities, and society in general. And to a certain extent, those of us who have the privilege to have access to all this information also have the responsibility to extend that to our circles. And some circles will be larger and some will be smaller, but all circles matter. So one of the things that I like to do in any of these talks is encourage everybody to exercise that opportunity. And all of you in this course are leaders. You can actually influence people to educate themselves or even provide resources to educate them. Because the reality is that freedom is not freedom unless you know what you're choosing. It's not just about choosing, it's about understanding your choices, having, an informed decision made, not for you, but by you. But some of the challenges that we face, especially in the Bay Area and especially in all the big tech, is that sometimes we build technology for the sake of technology, and we kind of forget the human value, the human aspect of it. And in this case, it's more important than ever to make sure that we develop AI in a human-centric sort of way. So it's about creating technology that's at the service of humanity and not the other way around. It's not about creating technology and then training people to be able to use that technology or adapt to it. It's about having the technology adapt to our needs and cater to our needs. So I asked Gemini, and fortunately we have all these tools in the Google Workspace where you can say, hey, Gemini, generate a slide about human-centric AI. And this is literally what Gemini came out with. And personally, I think it's a very good slide that underlines the critical aspects of what human-centric AI is, right? This one I generate myself, so I take credit for this one. In my opinion, one of the key elements that we have to think about is about generating trust. This revolution is going to be amazing and at the same time difficult. And there are many decisions that need to be made. And if we don't bring society along with us, then the transition might be harder, longer, and harsher for many, right? So how do we generate trust? How do we bring people along? How do we make them part of the conversation, right? By making the technology useful and relevant, easy to use and understandable, by having high ethical and responsible bars that people can trust, by building the foundation of the future, right? We want to democratize access, not by just moving senselessly forward, but by doing this in a very bold way, but also very responsibly, right? We want to be responsible. We always want to make sure that we do the right thing because it's more important to do things right than to do them fast. But let's make no mistake, the revolution is already here and there is no stopping it. Even if some say, let's slow down, let's stop research, I don't think that's happening. I don't think there is any way to stop this wave. So it's a matter of either surfing the wave or ducking under. And I honestly don't know what the usefulness of ducking under the wave would be once the wave has passed you over, right? The way I like to look at this is like we are on the verge of a new renaissance. It's about seeing how AI is going to impact every field of science and knowledge, and how we're going to be seeing new breakthroughs that we thought was going to take centuries maybe or decades to break. And now with AI, things are accelerating so much. I think that we're going to be witnessing amazing things, right? Because these tools are empowering the world to accelerate progress and innovation in a way that has never been done before. This isn't like any other revolution because it's horizontal to almost everything. And it's so much faster in the way it's adopted and spreads. And we can think and we can dream about so many more things, like decoding the human genome, right? Understanding our how we're built, right? Our DNA and our genome, or being so much better in terms of energy. Like our brains need only 23 watts of energy. With 23 watts, I mean, this is the most powerful computer that we know of. Can you imagine if we were able to translate that efficiency, bioefficiency, to the systems that we're building today? We might be able to do anything with pretty much very tiny little amounts of energy, right? Or biodata storage. There's nothing that is more efficient than DNA. How much information is stored in our DNA? So how can we emulate our understanding of the world at a biological level to actually do the innovations that we're thinking about? Or what I mentioned before, the discoveries of new materials, right? The NOMED project by Google has already found 2.2 million of new crystals, and 380,000 of them are stable materials. And we don't know still what those materials are going to be useful for, but imagine how much of a disruption that could be. Like if you think about materials that are rare, difficult to find, and they make very expensive. If you find something that is, say, a superconductor material that works at normal temperatures, the standard temperatures, that would be like already something huge, right? So again, we're going to see amazing things. Decoding the universe. I was once meant to study astrophysics, so I'm in awe of the universe and all the theories behind it. There's so much that we can actually learn by simply analyzing the data that we're getting from all the different missions and so on, right? Or decoding the human brain. We have a couple of projects. One of them is about Google and Harvard unveiling a very detailed map of the human brain. We actually mapped 1 cubic millimeter and mapped all the different connections there. It's amazing what we're doing. Or the abyss, right? It's like more people have been to space than they have been down, very far down in the Mariana Trenches or something like that. Well, we know there are species that we still don't know about. We don't really understand how there is life at such a deep and heavy pressure, so we can decode what's happening there and how life survives in the dark and so on, right? And why not decode oneself? How about we use AI to understand not only our biology and everything else, but our understanding of the world, how our preferences, how we work, what we like, understanding a lot better who we are inside and out. Why wouldn't that be exciting? I think that in a nutshell, we're in a new world. And the problem is not the new world. The problem is that we're trying to manage that new world with old rules. So that needs to change. And that's why I personally work on human values alignment. And some of you might wonder, what is that? Well, so I asked Gemini once again to tell me what human value alignment is. And it's about understanding what values are embedded in the models and agents based on those models that we generate. Because the reality is that we're going to have agents and models that do everything for us at work, at home, for our personal purposes. We want to make sure that the decisions that they're making and the answers and the recommendations that we're getting are actually aligned with our values. And if they are not, then be aware of that. But how do we measure that? What guarantee do we have that this is the case? I mean, this is beyond safety, right? This is about the future of our children, of the new generations, right? That's why we work in these kind of areas. Google has always been a pioneer in terms of safety and in terms of responsible development. And we have recently compiled the AI principles that we launched in 2018, I think it was, and that now we have basically reduced to three main principles. One is about bold innovation. Let's be bold, let's be ambitious, let's think big, let's dream, right? The other one is about responsible development and deployment. So it's, speed is nice. We all want to move fast, but it's better to do things well than to do them fast. And collaborative progress together. It's not about us, the big tech building the world, or somebody else building the world, all the government telling us how to build the world. It's about a common effort where society must have different stakeholders and voices that come together under the understanding that they have informed opinions and desires about what they want the world to be. And this is also an update on our frontier safety framework. The frontier models are those super large models that only a few companies in the world have. And we've come together to basically agree on some safety frameworks. So our recommendations have changed, they have heightened. We have new deployment mitigations procedures, and there is also significant research going towards deceptive alignment risk, which, if you remember what alignment was about, is about a situation where the models appear to be aligned, but they're actually not. It's just a way of uh, pretending, like masquerading as aligned, when in reality the decisions that they are making are not aligned with the principles that we think. So Stephen Hawking's, the late Stephen Hawking used to say that intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And right now, this is one of the biggest changes that society, humanity has ever faced. So it's about basically putting our natural intelligence to the test. So let's be bold, let's be responsible, let's do more research on generative AI. Let's make sure that we understand in what direction we want to drive this new world that we're building, right? Einstein used to say that imagination is more important than knowledge. And I concur to a certain degree. I think that a lot of the innovation and breakthroughs that we have lived through were in the imagination of writers before any scientist ever discovered them. So it's a time to leap forward. It's a time to kind of jump in, embrace AI responsibly, train oneself, educate oneself, help those around us to educate themselves, and be part of this new revolution. But it's also important to do that with humility, because this is such an important and transformational shift. We don't want to just think that we're going to do it right no matter what. We have to think things through. We have to test it. We have to develop responsibly. And we have to understand that it's not the responsibility of a few, it's the responsibility of us all. There is a saying by Alice Walker. It says, the most common way people give up the power is by thinking they don't have any. And what I find is that people that are not in the world of AI today think that they are completely out, that they're excluded, that they have no voice, and that is not true. I think we all have a voice, but in order for that voice to be useful, to be meaningful, to be impactful, it has to be an informed voice. It doesn't help anybody when people speak out of their gut feeling without understanding what's happening, or from the ignorance of just hearing stories or anecdotes. We all need to have a minimum of education in order to have a voice and a say towards where we're going. So here's the challenge for all of you. What role are you going to play in the AI revolution? And with that, I leave you with, it's indeed a time to grow, and I thank you all.
Awesome. I think that's a really great way to end, is like, what are you going to do? What are we going to do? And I think part of why we have these sessions is um, to get our minds blown like you just did, um, to have that imagination, but also to really think that, you mentioned that um, this world has changed. Some people say, well, the bus left the station. This is not a bus. This is a rocket sh this is a wave of rocket ships that have left the building, and and we need to make sure that we're prepared, and that's why we have these sessions. We have I think there's so much to unpack here. I think the one thing that I will say with was it Project Gemma? Um, my wife's name is Hema, Gema. So she said, "Oh, that's a perfect name for, they're really smart at Google because they have the best name for the project." Um, but let me while we have a few questions already here. Let me start with Madeline. Madeline, she's always actually, this is her. She's always looking for upskilling and reskilling, but many organizations recognize the need for upskilling and reskilling, but efforts often remain fragmented. Some led by business, others governance or universities. What specific strategies would you suggest to create a truly coordinated system where workers, employers, and educators are aligned in preparing for the future of work?
Awesome. So I have my opinion on this. So please
Yeah,
don't
we want that
don't
opinion.
think
Yeah.
don't think that this is the recipe. This is just, I guess, an informed opinion based on my discussions with a number of governments and understanding what the challenges are. So the first learning in all these discussions is that you're never going to get a homogeneous, uniform understanding or opinion on how to do this. But it's better to get started with something and then evolve it and change it and shift it and pivot it than doing nothing. It's like paralysis by analysis is the worst thing that it could be. So even if you're not agreeing 100% with the direction that things are taking, it's better to get things moving. And the first thing that I've been advising every government that I have interviewed with, and I was in the Latin America in a few countries last year, is to have a strategy, an AI strategy that is based on what role that country wants to play in a globalized world of AI, and what are the assets, what are their advantages, what are their strengths and weaknesses, and how that kind of trimmers down into what you need to put into place. So those ingredients are usually the same. What changes is the level of maturity that you have them at. For instance, infrastructure. If AI is mostly in the cloud and embedded in some devices, then you're going to have more powerful AI, more accessible to everybody if you have cloud infrastructure and you have the data in the cloud. If you're so far behind and your cloud infrastructure is not mature enough or your connectivity is not, then you need to work on that because those are foundational requirements, right? Training people. So it's about education and having resources and access to information. It's about having qualified personnel. So strengthen the university and education from the bottom up. So there are very many ingredients there, right? But the most important ones beyond the obvious ones is actually bringing people along. Is educating people to understand what's coming, to understand that it's not optional, to have them make whatever choices they are going to make under the understanding that reskilling and learning and being part of this revolution is going to be the best way forward.
Right. No, that's so true. And one of the things we do in Conectado using immersive AI is to look at those upskilling, reskilling opportunities, like even just getting AI literate, just knowing about, what does it mean to have a large language model? And actually getting your hands on it. I think a lot of people are, as you said, or we might be afraid. I think now is that time because everyone's on the same playing field, because I don't think there's ever been a time where we all have had these tools readily available to us, even in sectors that even in areas and communities that we may not even have thought of before. So I think you're absolutely right. Art says, greetings, Pilar. Congratulations on your recent highest recognition in Sevilla. It must have been super exciting without massive computational resources demonstrating disruptive solutions. Um, Many small Latino, Latinx businesses rely on open source models. Um, while prototypes are feasible with open source, scaling requires greater computational access. Where can we go? Any thoughts on that?
I'm reading through the question, sorry.
Mm,
So there's this big discussion in the in the market about open source versus closed models, right? And at Google we have both kinds because having closed models give you a heightened level of security and control, so you can actually make sure better that things are working. If you have the resources to create a closed model that's reliable, you can evolve and maintain it and so on, then that's great. And it's going to help, especially when you have regulations for high risk applications and use cases, right? But also, open source models, like any open source code before, is open to the innovation of so many. It's being crowdsourced, right? So that is going to help the evolution and the learning and the democratization of access to the latest of the latest or almost the latest to both companies and academics and so on. So both of them need to be taken care of. I think that there is room in the market for both kinds of models depending on what you're going to use them for. Now, as a company, as a startup, if I were to put together my startup or I had a small or medium-sized company right now, and I'm either leading it or advising them in their board, like we have, like Guillermo and I have done before. What I would say is that you have to understand how strategic it is for you to have your own model with your own data, or the partnerships that you're going to enter, because it's about flexibility and it's about choice. This field is moving so fast that unless you have a partnership that allows you to be flexible and choose pretty much any model, whether it's yours or somebody else's or a competitor's, then you're going to be locked into that infrastructure and it's going to be very expensive and very slow to change. So I think that one of the most important things is that flexibility to test things out, to understand what market and what your competitive advantage given the new market with AI is, and then choose whether you're going to start with the open source models and train them with your data and see where that takes you, because that's good and bad depending on what you're going to do, or choose a partner, like in this case, obviously, I would advocate for Google, that allows you to both have the Google models, but also any other model that you want in that infrastructure.
right. So Pilar, I think we have one last question. And maybe we could do it quickly, but I think this is a really interesting one, an important one, from Bel Hernandez, who says, so you mentioned that we need to spread the word. If I try to sell AI to some of my friends and family members who are blue collar workers, how does this help me? What do you suggest that we tell them?
Well, what we say in these cases is that AI is not going to take most jobs, but someone using AI will, right? So if whatever it is that they're working on is likely to be disrupted by AI, it's in their best interest to adopt AI as soon as possible, reskill, and be one of those that can actually be competitive, more efficient, more productive with AI. Because otherwise, at some point, somebody else will do that job, and then they will not be competitive anymore. So it's in their best interest to understand how AI is going to disrupt their world, if at all. I mean, if you're a gardener, for instance, then chances are the AI is not going to touch you in a long time. If you're
Well,
a plumber,
I've seen, gardening, like vehicles and things like that that are driven by AI, right? And so,
Yeah, but it's still, I think that it's harder there. I think
yes,
that the
yeah, you're
cost
right.
and so on, I think that there are certain like plumbing.
Yeah,
You still want your plumber to come home and do whatever the plumbers need to do, right? So there are certain jobs that are going to be more
yeah,
isolated from the AI disruption, but there are some other jobs that are not. Like for instance, a mechanic in a car shop, right? It's like all the cars are going to be driven by AI. If you don't have the tools to actually analyze and fix the car, then what are you going to do, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's about future proofing themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think we're right exactly on time. And I know there's questions in here, and we'll hopefully with Pilar's help, we'll be able to get to those. But Pilar, I can't thank you enough for taking time. For those that you that may not I don't know if I said this at the beginning. She just flew all the way from España last night just to be with us. Not that she couldn't do it from over there, but to spend time with us and to share such valuable insights into the future of AI, the incredible work you're doing at Google, but also what you believe in your way of sharing this knowledge with us, which was very consumable. Sometimes it's hard to, hear someone that is really talking very technical, and I think you really blend that um, that humanistic side with it with the technology itself, and that's I think the beautiful blend of where we're going with AI. So this has been a great enlightening discussion. I know today's conversation will help all of us be better and understand opportunities, challenges, and what we need to do in AI. So Pilar, thank you for this time that you've spent with us, and for everyone else. We look forward to continuing these conversations. If future sessions, we'll have again, we'll get on our monthly track, riding the wave of AI. So stay tuned for upcoming webinars, and thank you all for being here. And again, thank you, Pilar, for spending the time.
Thank you all. Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.